Ooh, okay, all right, yeah, I'm ready, I'm pumped, let's do this, oh yeah. Okay, so while I'm setting up to do the review, like I'm putting my suit and tie on, I'm getting the lights hooked up, my camera, my laptop and everything, I usually play music in the background to get me excited to do the video, and it could be anything really, but today was Make a Man Out of You from the Mulan soundtrack, so I am ready to go. This will be One Piece chapter 1032 review titled Oden's Beloved Blade, or Beloved Sword. Whether it's a sword or a blade, it really doesn't matter. Of course, the title refers to Enma, Yama, the Guardian of Hell. Alright, it's one of those situations where, yes, you know, the title of the chapter refers to Enma, and Enma does have a moment in this chapter, something involving the sword and Zoro and everything, and his fight with King, but then the end of this chapter is like a massive mind screw moment of like, okay, what? So this is going to lead into a bunch of random theory territory, so let's just start off. Okay, so the cover page is actually really funny. It's Yamato accompanied by two black cats making a delivery to a little old lady that lives on a mountain. Like, Yamato has a bunch of like supplies and the cats are like carrying a bunch of crates and bags and stuff, and normally I would not understand this at all. I had to look this up a little bit. So there is a transport company in Japan called Yamato Transport, okay? So there it is right there, and their logo is this. It's two black cats together, like a mama cat like delivering her little kitten. So that's cute, and then so it's like Yamato, and also Yamato was the name of a region in Japan way back in the day. That's probably where Yamato Transport got its name. So that's the joke. It's like a joke you could really only understand if you knew Japanese transport companies. That would be like if there was like, if I wrote a story, if I wrote a comic book, and I'm like, I will name one of these characters FedEx. You know, that's basically where we're at right now, but it's a cute cover story. Okay, so actually, you know what? It hasn't been a cover story in a while, right? Yeah, it's been a hot minute since we've gotten one. Beiji's All My Family was the last, and that ended like, I want to say that ended like over a year ago since we saw the wedding between Lola and Gotti. You know, it's been quite some time, so I don't know, maybe soon we'll kick off a new one of those. Anyway, we start off the chapter actually with Marco and Izo. Yeah, those are two people we haven't really seen what's going on with in a while. So Marco is in his full Phoenix form, and he seems to have recovered. Some translations of this dialogue seem to indicate that Marco is very injured, and the official version is that he is not injured. He was actually referring to Izo, who is injured. Given the fact that Marco has the flames of rejuvenation, I would imagine as long as Marco is still conscious and you give him enough time, he can pretty much heal from any wound. It just depends on how much energy he exerts when he's fighting. So obviously he was fighting King and Queen, so he was up against the wall for a while and he was kind of out of practice. But if you just give him, I would say like 10, 20 minutes of like a breather for him to just like, you know, collect himself and use the flames of rejuvenation from his Phoenix power, he would probably be able to heal himself or get his stamina back. So he's back in his full Phoenix form, flying around the battlefield carrying Izo, and he's mentioning like, hey, you know, Izo, what's up? You know, I guess Izo came up to Marco and it's like, hey, Marco, I need a favor. I need you to pick me up and fly me over somewhere, right? And so Marco's like, okay, I'll do that, but you're really injured. Are you going to be okay? And Izo's like, I just have a really bad feeling about that report that we heard about some flame yokai traveling through the castle, okay? Obviously referring to Kanjuro's Kanzenbo, the giant amorphous fire blob that's moving toward the armory. Now, obviously, Izo's from Wano, and he used to be a member of the Scabbards as well, so he might have an idea of like, oh, maybe this is Kanjuro and his brush powers. You know, he's a traitor, and he's doing one last-ditch effort to, you know, like, set the whole castle ablaze or something like that. I'm not really sure. But then again, remember, Izo spent a good chunk of time outside of Wano traveling with Whitebeard. I'm just saying that, like, the whole thing that, like, you know, Kanjuro is a traitor, that probably hit the rest of the Scabbards, like Kinemon and Kawamatsu, definitely like Okiku, very hard. You know, probably more so than it did with Izo, who hadn't seen Kanjuro in like, you know, decades anyway, okay? So obviously he's like, he remembers Kanjuro in their training days and stuff, but he's been out of Wano for so long, like over 20 years since the last time you really saw him, it probably is like, oh, he's a traitor. So he's able to maybe think this through a lot more logically, and what I'm thinking here is because, Okiku was so emotional during her fight with Kanjuro, and she couldn't really finish him off, she just couldn't bring herself to do that, it'll be up to Kiku's brother, Izo, to actually finally, and maybe not finish off Kanjuro, he might already be dead, or maybe very close to dead, but finishing off the flame yokai. That might be up to Izo there. Now, I'm not really sure what Izo could do. I mean, he's got guns, so it's just like, all right, Marco, so here's the deal. You're gonna fly me to that flame yokai, wherever it is. And Marco's like, all right, but the report says it can phase through walls like a ghost, and it sets things on fire. How are you gonna fight that? I'm gonna start blasting! You know, he just starts opening fire on the Kanzenbo, and maybe that'll work. I'm thinking also the fact that Marco, Phoenix, Blue Fire, that might actually be able to do something against the fire yokai, but I guess we'll see. It's cool at least that Oda didn't forget about them, you know, because we found out a lot of stuff about Izo in this last arc. It'd be cool to have some spotlight specifically on him, and, you know, Marco's not out of the fight as well. I mean, Marco is like, he's done with the big fights. He's like, all right, listen up. I fought against King and Queen, two of the All-Stars, 2 billion plus bounties with ancient zone powers. I held them off for a good chunk of minutes. All right, Sanji's fighting against the giant Brachiosaur. Zoro's got the Pteranodon. I'm taking a breather. Now, that doesn't mean that Marco is just, like, out of the fight. Like, he's like, all right, I'll leave this to you guys. I'm gonna go over here and get some Starbucks. You know, like, doesn't mean that. It means Marco's like, I'm gonna take a breather. I'm gonna recover my energy. I'll still help you guys where I can, but I'm gonna leave the big fights up to you, up to the next generation, you know? Marco's in his late 40s. He's getting up there, okay? But anyway, they fly by Big Mom, and Big Mom is just stomping as a giant kaiju throughout the hall, although we don't see Kid, we don't see Law, we just see Big Mom in just like a rage as she's stomping around, okay? So we don't really focus on that very much. But Marco also admits, he's like, yeah, you know, the castle's still ablaze, like, this is a problem, so, yeah. Eventually, this is going to be an issue, and it kind of already is, where the members of the Beast Pirates that are fighting in the hall are trying to leave, and they can't because it's, like, on fire, so they're trying to leave through the buildings, like, exits, and the samurai of the rebellion are actually holding them back at the doorway. So that's actually very tactical. It's like, wait a second, this whole damn hall has been set on fire. Eventually, they're going to try to go out through the doors. So let's just set up a bunch of samurai at the choke points, and then just, like, you know, you shall not pass! And remember, these are the samurai of Wano that have waited decades and decades, 20 years, in order to finally avenge the Kozuki clan, alright? You know 100% these samurai are willing to die if it means, like, even if it's like, okay, this whole castle, this whole Muffin Mountain is gonna burn down with the Beast Pirates inside. They're pretty much cool with that. Like, they knew going into this. Like, that's why they burned their ships and sank them. Like, there's no going back. I mean, if we all win, that's great. But if it comes down to, like, a last stand type situation where it's the samurai of the Kozuki clan, the ghosts of the past, going down with the Beast Pirates, they're okay with that. As long as Momonosuke survives and he becomes the new shogun, they'll lay down their lives here, okay? So the Beast Pirates are like, bring in the cannons, we need to blast open the doors, and so they start blasting as well. That's a you know, very intense moment there. It's just kind of glossed over. We only get like one panel, but the implications to that are insane. So now we cut now to the second level basement floor. We're not in the sub basements. Remember, it's like 5 regular levels, and then basement level 1, basement level 2, and then there's the sub basement levels, which is where the armory is. The armory is in the sub basement, the lowest most level in Onigashima, okay, like in the bedrock of the actual island, okay? And so this is where Apu, Drake, and Yamato are at, as well as Fuga. Fuga is number 2, and he's running around, and he's chasing after Yamato, it seems, and he seems like really ecstatic. You know, when he saw Yamato, he was like, Fuga! Fuga, Fuga, Fuga! And he's running around. And so Yamato's like, Fuga, I know it's been a while. I know that you want to play right now, but I can't. I'm kind of busy, right? Meanwhile, Apu is still trying to sway Yamato over to his side. He's like, Yamato, have you seen this limited edition offer? Once-in-a-lifetime sensation. And Yamato's like, leave me alone. I'm trying to save this entire island from being blown up right now. And Drake is there, and Drake just looks over to Pooh, just like, man, you really just, you don't know when to stop, do you? Like, Pooh, he does something else in this chapter too, which is insane. Pooh really is he's either the biggest traitor just because he's the biggest traitor for everybody, or like I think I made a video about this where I talked about Apu and like what his ultimate goal is, and I think his goal is just like he really wants to be this Machiavellian schemer that can like, you know, he can play all these parties against each other. Like he really kind of wants to be like, you know, Kaguya or Black Zetsu in Naruto, or like Kaguya controlled Black Zetsu controlled Madara controlled Obito controlled Pain. You know, it just keeps going down the levels. I think Apu kind of wants to be that kind of character where he's like, you know, he's trying to manipulate Drake, trying to manipulate Yamato. You know, he's like, oh, I'm done with Kaido, trying to manipulate Kaido, you know, manipulating Kid and Law with their alliance, not Kid and Law, Kid and Hawkins with their alliance, right? Like, I think Apu is trying to be that kind of character, and he's not an idiot, but he's also not the smartest character in One Piece either, so I don't think it's working out here, but we'll see a little bit more with him as we continue. So the thing with Fuga and Yamato, so there was that theory that's out that I really like, the theory of like, what if the three samurai, the daimyo that like, you know, Ushimaru was, you know, actually the numbers that got transformed later on, okay? Because they kind of resemble each other. In that the case, Fuga would be Ushimaru, technically would be like Zoro's father, or maybe his DNA went into the creation of Fuga. I made a video about that too, and there's a lot of ways that might not make any sense, but even in this chapter, we seem to like indicate that Yamato and Fuga had a past relationship where Fuga just really liked Yamato, and Yamato would maybe like, I don't know, hang out and like drink with him. You know, keep in mind, Yamato spent most of her entire life inside of Onigashima, and the numbers probably did as well, so they probably hung out and drank a lot, and maybe Fuga just really took a liking to Yamato, but you could still indicate it with like, oh, what if, you know, what if Fuga really is Ushimaru, and that's the reason Fuga has like an affinity for Yamato, you know, and it might not be like he even remembers, it's just like, oh yes, oh, I like you, Yamato, okay, we drink now, glug glug glug. Also, we get Fuga's full body because we haven't really seen it up until now, because when the numbers were first introduced, Fuga was like sitting down and like eating that giant piece of mutton. We see the lower half of his body, and it's like a boar. It's like he's a centaur. So he's like this really big chubby guy with Ashura Doji's like hair, and then the lower half of him is like a boar. Maybe it's the lower half of the mountain god or whatever, but he has a tail as well. So I guess it's horse, but it's like kind of chunky. So I don't know, horse, boar, whatever. But yeah, he's like a centaur, okay? So he's like running through the hallway after all of them. As that's going on, above them begins to fall down Robin and Brooke. They just kind of fall because like they're in the basement, but it's like an actual like shaft that goes all the way up. And so Brooke and Robin just jump out, and they're falling down into the basement levels. They are being pursued by two of the masked members of CP0 that we saw last chapter following them, as well as the Kanzenbo. So we literally have Yamato, Apu, and Drake and Fuga running through the halls in the basement, and they're passing under this giant like shaft, and then woo, Robin, woo, Brooke falling down, and then CP agents following them, and then it's and then the Kanzenbo falling behind them. Alright, so it's like, who are they? Who are they? What's that? You know, like, what is going on here? This is crazy. You know, I thought this was just gonna be a regular fire festival and a standard rebellion. Now we got talking skeletons and cipher pull secret agents and giant amorphous combustible blobs. I mean, this is just ridiculous. Who's writing this story? Anyway, Robin and Brooke land on top of Fuga, and Fuga has really kind of curly hair, so it's kind of like a nice cushion that they land. Fuga doesn't even really notice that they landed on his head because he's huge. He's like oars sized. And so they land, and the CP agents are coming, and so Robin's like, you know, she's weakened, but she's like, we don't have a chance. We just have to fight here. We're kind of cornered, right? And so she begins to activate her Hana Hana, and Brooke takes out Soul Saw. He's like, okay, yo ho ho, I guess we're fighting then, Robin-chan. And then, as soon as they're about to fight, the Kanzenbo engulfs the two CP agents, ignites them on fire, and then begins to continue down into the basement. This thing literally, and Yamato, we even see a map to kind of indicate this, where the Kanzenbo began in the attic, where Kinemon and Okiku fought against Kaido. I mean, fought against is kind of a strong word, but, you know, where they had an encounter with Kaido. So Kanjuro got up, used his brush to create the Kanzenbo, Danzenbo right at the beginning of like levels 1 and 2. And then it sort of like went up to level 2, and then now it's moving down. So that was kind of the movement, this thing. And it's moving in a straight line because it can phase through walls, okay? So it's just like, whoop, second floor, first floor, bottom floor number 2, where it's at right now. And Yamato's like, oh shit, if it keeps just going down in a straight line from where we're standing, it's gonna end up right in the middle of the armory, and this whole island's gonna get blasted to bits while it's still in the sky before we've had a chance to move it out of the way or anything like that. And so she looks over to Fuga and she's like, Fuga, I need your help with something. And Fuga's like, Fuga, 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 Fuga. And she's like, yeah, okay, let's go. And so they go to have an idea. Robin and Brooke both do jump off of Fuga and they land on the ground. And they land on the ground just as they're seeing like everybody engulfed in the flames. Okay, so they're no longer on the... I was thinking for a second there that they were still on Fuga, and so Fuga was going to run away with Yamato, and Brooke and Robin were just going to be in tow. But no, they land on the ground there, okay? Then we see the Cypher Pole agents emerging from the flames, and they're pretty much fine. Like, they literally just walk out of the flames and just kind of dust themselves off, and they're not fazed by this at all. Keep in mind, being engulfed by this thing is like spontaneous combustion, okay? From the screams and death throes that we have seen the other members of the Beast Pirates exhibit, when this thing passes through you, it's just, ah! You just get ignited and then you die, okay? And the Cypher Pole agents are like, wow, that was mildly annoying, being lit on fire from every direction. Okay, whatever. As that happens, as soon as the Cypher Pole emerge from the flames, Apu, like he planned this, takes out a visual Den Mushi and starts snapping some candid shots. He's just like, aha! I will sell these to Morgans. Now, since Doflamingo's out of the way, the world government's had to send their own lapdogs to Wano. That's gonna be an interesting headline. So it's like, holy crap, Apu. It's like, dude, I gotta give it to him. He does have the initiative, okay? He might not be super smart, like he's not as like smart as Law or like other like really intelligent characters, but he sees an opportunity when he can see it, right? He's running and he's like, hey, Drake's here. I'm gonna try to get him to work for me. Hey, Yamato, you wanna work for me? Hey, CP0 agents, I could sell these to Morgans later. I can make a quick buck off these. He sees opportunity when he sees it. He takes full advantage of that. So he's just kind of snapping pics of the CP, and they see him and they're just like, you need to keep your damn mouth shut. And they just use Shigon on Apu, and he's like, oh, okay, like you didn't see that coming, right? So he just hits point blank with a Shigon, and just like, you just need to keep your mouth shut. You know, we don't have time for you right now. You're not our main objective, right? But yeah, just the idea is like, I'm gonna sell these pictures to Morgans and make money. He's like, that's Apu. All right, so he drops, and then the Cypher Pole agents then turn to Drake, and the one in the mask that's kind of the boss, the one with the bowler hat, he's just like, Diaz Drake, do you seriously not think we know who you are? Like, we know what you are. You know, now they don't specifically mention sword, but they say that, like, we know what you're really about. So that's implying that, like, we know you're not really a pirate. We know you're not really a member of the Tobiropo. We know that you're secretly working for the Marines. Now, they didn't mention sword or the Marines, so we actually don't know 100% if they know the whole story. They might just think that, like, we know that you're a traitor to Kaido. And Drake would be like, oh, yeah, traitor to Kaido. Yeah, sure, 100% I am. Actually, later they do. Apu does mention the Marines. So they might know that, and they probably know the existence of Sword. I mean, it's an intelligence operation, and meanwhile, I don't think Sword is probably a little bit like intelligence, but I think it's more about just like, you know, sneaking into Yonko territory as like, you know, disguising yourself as like a member of the crew, like, you know, Drake did with Kaido, and trying to figure out a way to eliminate them from within. So kind of, but it's like CP is like the experts at this, and I don't think Sword has been around for very long. I think Sword was founded by Sengoku and maybe Garp, and it's only like a few years old. Like it started when Drake like defected from the Marines. So it's like at least maybe 5-10 years old. I don't know exactly how long, exactly when Drake defected. But it's probably not that old, and the Cypher Pole agency's been around for centuries. So it's like, we know you're secretly a part of this, and you know, we're here to handle the pest control, so to speak. We're here to silence you, okay? So he goes to use Shigon against Drake, Apu gets back up, uses his Oto no Mi, like, boom, and then blasts the CP agent back. Doesn't really hurt him. He hits the ground, and he's just kind of like, even though he got blasted right in the face with this thing. And this is the same kind of attack that knocked Luffy out for a couple of seconds. Remember that, back at the hall, when Luffy got hit with that, he was like, he was unconscious with his pupils out for a while, and then it didn't take him long to recover, but still, same attack, and the CP agent just gets knocked back, and he's just like, and he gets up. So, if nothing else, I know Robin said that these Cypher Pole agents, are the one with the masks, are in a different level even amongst the CP, but even so, I mean, their endurance is top level here. We even saw one of them earlier in the arc get shot by Orochi. Remember, Orochi just took out a gun and shot one point blank right in the head, and it was just pong! And that was it, right? So these guys are insanely durable. They might be cyborgs, they might be robots, they might have some weird kind of body modification done to them by CP or by the Vegapunk or somebody, you know, you just never know. But anyway, Apu gets back up and Drake's like, oh, you're still alive, you didn't die from the Shigon. He's like, no, you idiot, I know what armament hockey is. And Drake is just like, oh, okay, whatever. He's like, well, hey, you're really a Marine, right? I knew it. He's like, it's not really important right now. So are you gonna help me fight these guys? And Apu's like, damn straight I'm gonna help fight these guys. They freaking stabbed me. It's like, all right then, let's do this. And so as the CP are getting up, the one with the bowler hat and the one with like the tribal mask that he has to like hold up, then Drake goes into his Allosaur form, roar, and then Apu starts using his fighting music, and then boom, the fight begins in earnest. So this is crazy. I never thought, like, okay, that's where the Cypher Pole Zero fight's gonna be. It's gonna be Drake and Apu teaming up to fight against CP0. Not what I expected, but all right, let's roll with this. By the way, I want to bring up something right now because this is going to be relevant later on in this last part of the chapter here, okay? We've already seen with Queen the raw power of the dinosaurs, right? And the whole thing is Oda's doing these really goofy things that have nothing to do with, you know, body modification or cybernetic enhancements. No, it's just dinosaurs like the Brachiosaur are able to just like and then fire off their heads like freaking robots or whatever, and they're able to fight like snakes, right? Okay. But no, we've yet to see Drake pull off anything like that. So I am super curious into seeing the true raw power of the Allosaur. Is the Allosaur gonna have like he has like the little stubby arms? Is the Allosaur arms gonna like fire off like whips or something? Or is Drake gonna have like electric teeth? Like, this is how the Allosaur hunted back in the days of yore. Electrified teeth! And like just starts to chomp down on the CP agents. Cause if all the other ancient zones are capable of this wacky shit, I think he should be able to do wacky shit too, alright? So we'll see. Also, Apu's there to help out, so yeah, I don't know, but at least this will keep CP0 busy for a little while. So now we cut outside. We see a brief overview of Onigashima from a distance, and we see Momo still there, still struggling. We don't get a close-up of him. We don't see what he's saying or thinking or anything. We just see a full view of the island, and Momo there, like, still making clouds. And so he's trying his best, but we don't really know his progress. But more importantly, we're now focusing on Zoro fighting against Kingu. All right. Now, we get to see what King's ability is as a Pteranodon. By the way, it has nothing to do with the fact that he's a Lunarian or the fire that's coming out of his back. Nothing to do with any of that. Just like Queen's ability to fire his neck didn't have anything to do with the fact he was a cyborg, okay? It's just, this is how Pteranodons canonically fought in the One Piece world. This is how they hunted their prey, alright? So if you notice here on this Pteranodon, you see there's like a crest thing on the back of its head, alright? So what King does is he's flying in the air above Zoro. He takes his arm, he grabs this crest, and he yanks it back. All right, at first I thought he was gonna grab it and, like, you know those old like water faucets you would find outside, like you have to, like, you know, pull down on the water faucet, which this kind of looks like that, and like I thought that's what he was gonna do, but no, he grabs this, he pulls it back, and in effect, it stretches his whole front of his face back as well. So he yanks this back, his beak and everything scrunches back up into his face. He makes the ha face. So we see that from King, like the ha, as he's like pulling back his face, like he's like drawing it taut, like his face is kind of made of rubber, like Luffy could do this probably. And so he's like pulling it back and he's like, and then he lets go, and I thought his freaking head just flies off his neck for a second there, but no, he lets it go, and it's just like the tensile strength. It really is like a Gumu Gumu no technique, where he pulls it back, lets it go, and it's just like, whoosh! Like his head just flies off like that, and then bounces right back into his head, okay? So it does that. And it fires off with such intensity, Zoro likens it to a laser beam. He's like, damn, that's like a laser beam. How do you dodge that? And King is like, this is how the Pteranodons fought during the Cretaceous era. And Zoro's like, huh. How about that? You learn something new every day. I love the reactions that people have with this. Now, it's not like Zoro went to school. It's not like, okay, time to learn about dinosaurs today. Like, he doesn't go to school for, you know, any like paleontology or anything like that, right? So, somebody tells him this is how freaking dinosaurs fought. And he's like, really? Well, how about that? Anyway, back to the fight. He just accepts it and moves on. He mentions that, like, hey, well, what about those flames that are coming out of your back? Is that a Pteranodon thing too? And he's like, well, my brother Rodan kind of does that, but no, it's different with me. No, King just mentions, like, no, the fire coming out of me, that's something different. And so Zoro lands and he uses 360 caliber Phoenix. See, the problem here is that he's fighting against an opponent that can fly, and Zoro has fought against really mobile flying opponents before. This isn't the first time. Remember Bram back at Skypiea. But the thing is, like here, King's wings are not like normal wings. So it's not like Zoro can just like slice one of his wings and then he's grounded. No, he tries to use the black rope like dragon twister thing, and that doesn't work because he literally just uses his wings to like guard. His wings are like shields. His wings are like shields that like block and deflect all of the slashes that Zoro does with his techniques. So 360 caliber Phoenix doesn't work. The great dragon twister does not work. He's just blocking everything. And he's looking up at him and he's just like, man, I'm just gonna keep wasting my energy. You know, really, it's like dinosaurs and dragons are really like the manifestation of defense, right? Like he says that to King, like, you dinosaurs and dragons are really super tough. And King says, he's like, well, yeah, you're not wrong. That is true. I am pretty tough. Although my situation is even greater. So from what I got from that line is that King is basically saying, he's like, yeah, the fact that I have an ancient zone does increase my defense and my stamina, but because of what I already am, and he doesn't mention Lunarian to Zoro, but he's like, because of what I am already, my defense and my stamina and my blocking capabilities, that was already really high to begin with. And now it's like a booster with the Ancient Zone. It's like maxing out your stat in like a game, and then the Ancient Zone gives you a +10 anyway, you know? So it's kind of like that, right? And so King, though, after saying that, goes back into his human form, or his Lunarian form, takes out his sword, and clashes with... Enma, no! I should mention at this point that anybody that wants to buy these swords, I just get them off Amazon, but these are not like, I think sometimes people think that like I have some kind of special connection to get these swords, or like they're really like actual swords. No, they're extraordinarily decorative, okay? And even just me taking them out of their scabbards just to do videos, I'm not like actually using them as swords, like hitting things. Even with the wear and tear that I use, they still like kind of break down. So you can get them off Amazon. They're not hard. Just like search for like Zoro's katanas or like Enma or whatever, but you do gotta take care of them because I have to replace a bunch of these. Anyway, so he takes out Enma and King takes out his sword and he clashes with him. He doesn't use the sword breaker thing, but he's like, you know, I enjoy a good duel every once in a while. I'll fight you with my sword rather than fighting you as a Pteranodon, right? Okay. So they're clashing there, and Zoro is actually really thinking hard. I mean, I'm not calling Zoro stupid or anything, but he's kind of doing the same thing that we're doing. Like, we're looking at King, and we're trying to figure out, like, okay, he's got black wings, he's got fire coming out of his back. Like, what are all these traits of the Lunarians? Like, what are they, really? And Zoro's doing the same thing. He's looking, and he's like, okay, he obviously can fly with his Pteranodon wings when he transforms into that form. But what about the regular, like, black feathery wings he has when he's in his, like, regular form? He admits that, like, they're not ornaments. They're not ornamental. He can definitely move his wings, but he's yet to see King fly with his regular wings. Alright, only when he goes into a Pteranodon or his hybrid can he fly. With his regular wings, he hasn't seen him fly yet with those, but he can still move them. So they're part of his body, but he can't fly with them. So Zoro, you know, he says that as like, okay, that's one clue. And then he's got the flames coming out of his back. I thought they were from his devil fruit, but he just said that they're not. So something else is going on there. But he also mentions King has not bled a single time yet. So even though Zoro has cut him and has hit him with his sword many times, he's just not bleeding. And so Zoro realizes, like, I might not be able to defeat this guy unless I figure out what race he is. You know, and he's like, is he a fishman? Is he a mink? Is he an ancient giant? And Zoro's like, nah. He has to be part of some race from some part of the world I've probably never even heard of. But unless I figure that out, I might not be able to win this, okay? So King is just clashing with Zoro with his sword. He hits him really hard. Zoro flies back. He hits the ground. And he hits the ground. He's just like, man, this is a tough fight. I need to figure out who this guy is or I'm not going to be able to win. And at that same moment, he begins to hear the sounds of a shamisen playing. You know, the shamisen, the instrument, kind of like a Japanese lute that Komurasaki always played, like Hiyori always played. He begins to hear the strumming of a shamisen, and he hears it very clearly, even amidst this battlefield. And he's still holding on to Enma. He's on the ground laying there, and he's like, is that a freaking shamisen? Who the hell is playing a shamisen? And then all of a sudden, Enma begins to absorb all of the haki out of Zoro, like it did when he first wielded it. And he's just like, what is the shamisen doing? Oh, Enma, why? Ugh! And so the haki begins to get drawn out of Zoro into his arm, so it gets all, like, you know, emaciated like it was before. And then we cut away immediately. We do not see what happens to Zoro. We don't see King's reaction to this. He just cuts away to the last scene of the chapter where we are in the treasure repository where Orochi has been holed up. He was in there picking his nose like, I am Lord Orochi! Hurry back, Fuku Rokuju! We need to get out of here! And so he's just hanging out in the treasure hall, kind of like distant from everybody. He seems pretty confident that he's safe. And then he begins to hear the sound of a shamisen as well. And he's like, who is playing the shamisen amidst this battle? It makes no sense. I was gonna say, like, oh, I don't know, how about all those people in the indestructible waiting room? Because every time we saw CP0 in this arc up until a couple of chapters ago, they were sitting in this waiting room with some coffee and biscuits, and there was always an oiran or a geisha or somebody next to them playing the shamisen. So yeah, but no, Orochi's like, who's playing the shamisen at this hour? This is ridiculous. And so he begins to kind of crawl through the room, and I guess there's like another room next to that room. It has like the Japanese like sliding doors. So he's like, it's coming from this room, and he just kind of opens it a crack, and he sees Komurasaki, well, Hiyori, but dressed as Komurasaki, the Oiran, and playing a shamisen. And Orochi obviously is smitten with her, so he's like, you're a Komurasaki! I thought you were dead! I couldn't stop thinking about you even since that day! And it's like, I thought you went to heaven! And then Komurasaki's like, my lord Orochi, I couldn't stop thinking about you either. Please, come over here so I may stab you with this dagger, so I may play for you, like always, my lord. And so Orochi's like, oh my, this is great. Is this an illusion? Are you really here? And he begins to cry. Orochi begins to cry his eyes out. And he's like, even if it's a dream, I would never want to awake. And he begins to approach Komurasaki. End of chapter. She says, oh, I cannot wait until just to spend the rest of our lives together. End of chapter. Okay, so you know what I mean by mind screw moment, okay? So here's the thing. If the title of the chapter was not called Odin's Beloved Blade, and the fact that Zoro just heard this shamisen playing while he was in the middle of pitched combat with a Pteranodon, okay? If that did not happen, and it was just a scene with Orochi, and then he hears the shamisen, and it's Komurasaki in the next room, I would just say that at some point Hiyori managed to sneak into Onigashima. Probably not that hard. I mean, Tama was able to get there, so, you know, Komurasaki, she's smart. She could figure out a way, and also she spent her whole life kind of running around the capital, and so I'm sure she could figure out a way to get on the island. And so Hiyori figured out a way to get there, and then she found out where Orochi was, because obviously Hiyori mentioned to Zoro, like, I want to be the one to, like, slit slit his throat. I want to be the one to kill Orochi, right? And so this makes sense. And so she would just dress up in her Oiran attire, in her Komurasaki attire, and then just sit there and play the shamisen and just, you know, oh, Lord Orochi, it's been so long. Come over here so we may sit together and I shall play the shamisen while you rest on my lap. And then Orochi would be like, oh, Komurasaki, I missed you. And then he would just come over and then be like, yes, let us play the die, die, die. And it's just like he just takes out a dagger or something and just stabs him repeatedly. But that might actually not kill him either, given the fact that he's been decapitated like 7 times so far. But that's not all that happened, though. If that was just that, I'd be like, all right, she snuck in like an assassin and she's gonna go ahead with the stabbings, okay? But now we're getting connections to Enma, which I remind you was Odin's sword that he gave to Hiyori, his daughter. Ame no Habakiri went to Momo. And so the title of the chapter is Odin's Beloved Blade. And just as Komurasaki is playing the shamisen so that Orochi can hear, Zoro also hears the shamisen sound. He could not identify where it was coming from. I assume it was coming from Enma, maybe, like from the sword. And then as soon as he began to hear it, Enma began to suck out his haki. So there's something going on here, okay? Now, I remind you, Enma is a very weird blade, just in the sense that it is the only sword that seems to have a little bit of sentience, like it draws out the user's haki. Haki is willpower, it's ambition, you know, you have to be a living thing to have it. You know, you could be an animal, we've seen animals with haki, but we haven't seen like, this is a rock. The rock has haki, okay? So it's very weird that a sword has haki. I don't want to get all Bleach Zanpakuto with it or anything, but like, I don't know, is it possible that like, part of Hiyori's haki or Hiyori's soul is in Enma to give it that trait, or Odin's soul, or Toki's or something? I actually have an idea here that, okay, this is kind of far out there. I don't really know if this holds any water because the way that she talks is very reminiscent of the way that, you know, Komurasaki Hiyori talks. But for a second there, I was like, are we even sure that that's Hiyori? Are we even sure that that's her? What if it's Toki? Because Toki and Hiyori look remarkably like each other, okay? You know, mother and daughter. So is that Toki that might be dressing up like that and trying to fool Orochi so she can kill him? I don't know. I have no idea. Was it maybe Toki's soul that's in the sword? Because I think that's going to come back to be relevant. The fact that Enma absorbs haki from the user, and the fact that Odin had it and gave it to Hiyori, and as soon as Zoro's hearing the shamisen, this scene happens with Hiyori. Out of nowhere, by the way, okay? So, I don't know. I don't think Orochi is hallucinating here, or whether that or Hiyori's able to embody her spirit into Enma so she can project an image of herself, maybe using Zoro's haki as fuel. So I don't even know, like this is playing by a completely new set of rules. I'm literally making shit up as I go here. But like, it's like Hiyori's like, I embody my haki into Enma so it will carry out my will. And then it will use Zoro's haki in order to project a spectral image of myself on Onigashima, which will then slay Orochi. I would say that none of that makes any sense. But at the same time, if we go back before Wano, I would also say that there's no way Oda is going to implement time travel into this story either. And here we are, ladies and gentlemen. So, and the title of the chapter is Odin's Beloved Blade. So there's something going on with Enma and Hiyori. They're connected in some weird way. It could be spiritual or aura or straight up just the haki or something. I don't know, but there's a connection there, all right? And it's more than just like, this is my beloved sword. So it might be some Zanpakuto level shit. I don't know. Well, anyway, that's the end of the chapter. No break next week, so that's cool. Yeah, I guess more than anything, we didn't see the Sanji fight. I thought we were going to do the Sanji fight this week, but, you know, I guess we're doing this, I guess. We might just do them simultaneously. Like, we might have one chapter with Sanji, one chapter with Zoro and King, and just, you know, keep, you know, alternating. Maybe Oda wants to do that, you know, to keep them at the same time. But then we have this subplot right here. And we don't even know if Zoro is going to be okay. I would feel like Zoro would be able to get Enma under control, but then, like, then what would happen to Hiyori. Like, if Zoro absorbs the haki back into himself, would Hiyori stay there? Or would she, like, disappear or something like that? Like, how would that even work? Is she even physically there? Because I have no idea, right? Like, I have no idea if she's even there right now, okay? What's King's reaction to that going to be? Is King going to be like, oh, your sword is sucking out all your haki. Okay, well, that makes it really easy to do this, and then he just attacks him. Maybe some other people, like Samurai, will show up and try to defend Zoro for a little bit while he gets up. Also, Zoro's still under the effect of that medicine from Zo, and I can't imagine that's going to last a considerable amount of time, so he's going to have to hurry up here, and getting his haki drained isn't a good thing, really. So, yeah, this is definitely a mind screw ending of a chapter. Oda throws these in every once in a while, but this is definitely one of them. Those are my ideas, so take them for whatever you will. Let me know your ideas down below and all that stuff. This will be Tekking and King signing out. Hope you guys have a good day. This is a weird one.